Summer is here and we are all longing for a nice time on the beaches by the seaside. How clean is China's coastline? China released a white paper on marine eco-environmental protection last week, and there is plenty of good news. In less than a decade, China has invested into 175 conservation projects. Last year, the proportion of sea areas with good to excellent water quality grew by over 1/5. How did China make it? What's unique about China's approach? I'm pleased to be joined from Beijing by Dimitri de Boer, Regional Director for Asia and Chief Representative for China of ClientEarth, a non-profit environmental law organization. From Shanghai by Guifang, Distinguished Professor of International Law and Director for Ocean Rule of Law Center at Shanghai Jiaotong University. And here in the studio by Professor Gong, Vice President of the University of International Business and Economics, Israel. Welcome to The Point. Let me go to Dimitri for my first question, and it's good to see you again, Dimitri. Now, a piece of video, I don't know whether you noticed, a piece of video went viral in China when China's Vice Minister of Ecology and Environment, Guifang, held up a scarf during the release of the white paper last week. The scarf was made of plastic bottles collected on the beaches, and she said this was the project carried out by the local authorities in Guangzhou, southern China. And she also said that China is thriving to clean up all of its 283 bays by 2035. What was the key message you think she tried to highlight?
It's good to see you again, Liu Xin. And definitely what she was trying to highlight is that everybody can get involved in cleaning up the oceans. And we all want to see a healthy and clean ocean. And there's a lot of work to do. The white paper you mentioned also set a target that all of the bays of China must be cleaned by 2035, and that's a lot of work. And what the scarf also shows is there can be business models. You can, sometimes have circular economy or other, good economic results on top of all that.
Right. Actually, the white paper says that last year, the proportion of sea areas, as I mentioned earlier, with good to excellent water quality saw a 20% increase from a decade ago. That's not a small feat. Professor Xue, this was, of course, only one aspect of the marine environmental protection efforts undertaken by China. In a few key words, how would you define China's approach?
We really taking a lot of effort trying to treat the pollution, the environment, and now we only recently we see the increase of water quality, and this is really excellent news and rather stimulating, I think, to all the people working in the area trying to protect the ecology, environment, and things like that. I think that's really decades of continuous effort, and then we see the result. Yeah.
So in one key word, if you can give Professor Xue, what would be China's approach?
I think it's China's endeavor towards the quality life. I think this is part of quality life. And then we get the clean water for all the public, for the individuals. And I think that's the eco-environment effort, and we will see more in the future, certainly.
John, how would you define, using a couple of key words, the Chinese approach? Because there are a lot of people who are looking at what China is doing, and how come, a country with such a long coastline managed to carry it out in such a short period of time?
Well, the key word I have in mind is coordination. I think this has to be done in a coordinated way, led by the central government, and then supported, implemented at various levels of local governments, and I would also say implemented by non-profit organizations, grassroots, environmental protection organizations, and in society in general. I think this is something we don't see very often, and as sort of ordinary citizens living far away from the sea. But it is a big issue, and we have a very long coastline. And that the quality of water in coastal area, the preservation of the ecosystem, the environmental system in coastal area is vitally important. This is something that's going to be sustainable over the long run for a long time. So that's why I think the Chinese government's taking initiative. As usual, it's very characteristic of China, taking a government-steered, central government-steered, and supported by various local governments. This is a very Chinese thing, I think.
Dimitri, how would you define China's approach? Because you have been observing China's efforts for a long time on environmental protection. What would be the top two, let's say, keywords that you take away from how China approaches such problems in such efficient ways?
If you look at the white paper, it's extremely comprehensive. It goes from pollution to biodiversity conservation. It even covers low carbon development, so climate action, and so that's definitely a strong feature. And the laws and applying laws, really enforcing laws is another feature which is very important.
Well, you mentioned comprehensive. It's not a small thing to clean up the ocean, because it involves not just the ocean, the Bay Area, but also the rivers that flow into the ocean, the industries, the residents that live around the area. Now, let's take an example, for instance, China's governance of the Bohai Sea. It's in northeast China. It's close to major cities such as Beijing, Tianjin, and Dalian. And as a semi-enclosed bay, it has limited capacity for water exchange and self-purification, and the eco-environment was actually deteriorating until cleanup campaign started in 2018. And according to white paper, after 3 years, the trend was contained and there's a positive momentum. John, how do you look at this example, and how important is long-term planning and the top-down design approach?
This Bay Area involves a couple of provinces. I think this has to be done from a regulatory perspective by the central government. I think this is very much an issue of regulation as well as coordination. I think this has a lot to do with the local development in consideration of the protection of the environmental issues in the coastal areas. So this has to be coming from the top, in my view, and also it has to be supported at the grassroots levels as well. Typically, I think this is one thing that distinguishes from the Chinese government from other governments probably in general. These things are usually of a long-term in nature. It needs the government to take a long-term perspective. You spend money on it, you spend resources on it, and the effect is going to take over the long run, and the real effect is going to be only observed and seen and recorded after a couple of years. So you need the government to take a long-term approach to issue these issues, to address these issues, and it takes a lot of investment in my view. So I think this has to be coming from the top.
Yeah, Professor Xue, we were just talking about the example of the Bohai Bay and how since 2018 a cleanup campaign stopped kind of the downward trend of water pollution and the environmental and the ecological deterioration in that area. How does that example show the kind of comprehensive, coordinated, long-term approach of China in dealing with such complex issues?
I think this really only top-down, but also bottom-up. And actually, as far as I know, it started much earlier than 2018. It had been several decades for the Blue Sea action trying to treat the environment, because we know Bohai Sea involves a lot of industries like transportation, salt making, and things like that. And then now we use the coordination of regional cities or the provinces. They all work together. I think really an indication of the more and more attention paid to the area, and also the determination from the central government and from the ministry, and they all work together, but also involves the ordinary people, I mean the individuals and in the industry, people involved in the industries. They have to really to think this is an important thing to do. And then I think all the coordination of every individual base of effort, and then we have this kind of result.
Dimitri, how do you look at the involvement of the grassroots social organizations, the NGOs, the volunteers, and of course other ministries and other agencies in making this improvement possible?
Well, everybody should get involved, and a lot of things do require a lot of coordination. Government can't do this alone. Businesses, the public, academia, and a lot of communication is needed between all of them. And I think NGOs can play a really important role in that. NGOs can also play an important role in public supervision. So, to provide a final check on whether or not things are really improving. China, like any other country, has NGOs. Many of them are working in marine conservation and are doing terrific work. They certainly play a very important role.
What is the relationship, according to your observation, between the government, the central government, and the local authorities, and the various level and the NGOs? How do they work together on the same page, more or less, in achieving the same goals?
Ideally, yes. I think in reality, sometimes different stakeholders have slightly different interests. And so there is a process, right? Some stakeholders may need to make changes in the way they do things, and that can cause some tensions or disruptions. But it's actually very helpful to have rules that apply to everybody. It provides a level playing field. Sustainable fishing is a good example. If everybody just takes all the fish, then very soon there will be no more fishing industry. So the fishing industry can't survive unless there are some rules around the take. It's similar with aquaculture. If you have too much aquaculture, the pollution will cause the water quality to deteriorate, and everybody is affected. So again, you need rules, and if everybody follows those rules, it's actually better for everybody.
So it's not just a top-down approach, but you also need the cooperation and involvement of other sectors. John, going forward, do you think marine environmental protection will continue to be a priority?
Absolutely. I think what our guest was talking about is in economics we have a term called the curse of the commons. In other words, everyone has an incentive to sort of overuse the resources without sort of a public view on this. And this has to be coming from the central government. There's got to be leadership in addressing these things. There's got to be regulation to prevent overuse of resources. It has to strike a balance between development versus protection of environment and ecological system. So these are the things I think ultimately involve a coordinated effort coming from all parties in society, the government, the companies, the state government, the local city governments, as well as very importantly indispensable, I would say, NGOs, including foreign NGOs actually.
And private sector. We haven't had time to mention all of that, but it's definitely not a one-sided affair. We have to leave it there. Time has been really too short for this important topic. Many thanks to Dimitri de Boer, Regional Director for Asia and Chief Representative for China of ClientEarth, a non-profit environmental law organization; Guifang, Distinguished Professor of International Law and Director for Ocean Rule of Law Center at Shanghai Jiaotong University; and Gong, Vice President of the University of International Business and Economics, Israel.